So as you guys know from watching this channel and my coverage over the past year, or really since the Black Lives Matter riots began, retail theft is completely off the charts in this country. It is going up in major cities, and the reason for this increase in retail theft is due to the fact that we've changed the laws on how we deal with repeat offenders in this particular category in many places in this country, and thus these opportunistic criminals keep repeat offending. I often cite this chart from John Jay College of Criminal Justice that relates to the city of New York. As you can see, we have a dramatic increase in retail theft, 77%. It's up since the Black Lives Matter riots, and this is due in large part to New York State's bail reform law. This law guarantees a same-day automatic release for people who commit certain categories of crime. This includes retail thieves, and we've seen similar policies be implemented around the country, or policies that have a similar effect, which is one of the reasons why we're seeing an outsized increase in retail theft in other states or in other major cities, but some states are relatively the same or actually have crime in this category going down. If you didn't change your laws, chances are you didn't see the change in crime. It's really very simple when you think about it, but what people don't realize is that not only does this allow your petty repeat offender, your petty shoplifter, to get off without any consequences, but it opens the door for organized retail theft. If there are no consequences for a crime, and there's a ton of money to be made in that particular category, unsurprisingly, people will start to organize, have sophisticated operations, and this is also something we're seeing in increasing numbers around the country. There was a bust of a warehouse in San Francisco where they discovered about $8 million worth of stolen merchandise. This was largely from CVS's, from Walgreens, from Target, and all these locations that are closing that the left wing is telling you are closing for completely unrelated reasons, even though it's obvious and you basically have to be willfully blind in order to ignore it. Well, guess what? They just busted one of these warehouses in the city of Chicago, and yes, I do mean a full warehouse, and it had about $5 million worth of sneakers, just to show you that this is becoming a more and more common and more sophisticated operation. I've decided to delve into this so you can see it for yourself, just so you can see how absolutely crazy it actually is.
Now a CBS 2 exclusive. Check out all this loot. Millions of dollars in high-end shoes, including Nikes and Yeezys. You're not looking at a store, though. This is a West Side warehouse, home to a theft ring that targeted freight trains.
So normally I like to laugh at local news. I like to make fun of local news. But to be honest, when this guy is saying you're not looking at a store, that needs to be said, because this looks like a storage room or a warehouse that would be owned by Nike or one of these major sneaker companies. It's absolutely ridiculous how insane crime has gotten in the city of Chicago, to the point where you could store $5 million worth of merchandise in a central location that people are looting from trains, like we saw during the Black Lives Matter riots.
Now, law enforcement officials are calling it a sophisticated operation that was based here at this warehouse in the Austin neighborhood. They say the stolen goods were swiped off rail cars from across the country and then shipped here, where they were sold to unsuspecting retailers.
At first glance, it looks like the inventory closet of your neighborhood sneaker shop. Towers and towers of Nikes and Adidas boxes, some limited editions, others hard to find, and all of it stolen.
I mean, is that not crazy? Is that not absolute madness? They're panning around this warehouse, and you have even the sneakers on display so people can know what they look like, and it just looks like a regular store. And apparently this was a centralized location, because if you're going to store it anywhere, you'll want to store it near and around the city of Chicago, because they've removed all consequences for it. And yeah, it's just absurd to the level that people are getting away with this. And of course, sneakers happen to be highly profitable items, so it is a good thing to target. Now, I know a lot of people saw looting of sneaker shops during the recent Philadelphia riots and during the Black Lives Matter riots, so you might believe that looting these train carts is actually the voice of the unheard. These might actually be civil rights activists, but I'm going to assure you that in reality, in actuality, reality, this had nothing to do with civil rights for African Americans and everything to do with making a buck off of ruining this country. I mean, think about that store that we talked about over in Portland, where they were just looting the Nike store day after day after day until this historic location that was in a black neighborhood since the 1980s that essentially they built a complex around because they decided to open their first community store there that was sharing the profits with the neighboring area, ended up closing due to the fact that these particular items get targeted. Well, you see a whole warehouse full of it. You understand that this is an organized operation. You understand that we're not dealing with people trying to steal sneakers for these poor kids that are walking barefoot on their way to school or Bible study or whatever. This happens to be an organized criminal operation. Now, Fox 32 Chicago actually obtained images that led authorities to this warehouse from a September 19th burglary, and you can see as follows. They're taking a whole mess of merchandise. This is a sophisticated operation right here. Just look at how many boxes are in this freight cart that they appear to have stolen. Now, I know they said that they got this from a train, like a railway robbery, but it looks like they took an entire train cart. Now, it's actually a shipping container, which means that these people are sophisticated enough to have their own trucks. But as you can see, these are the people who are profiting dramatically off of this crazy retail theft. Now, I want to make this clear because a lot of people might have been confused. Sneaker theft, Chicago, me talking and referencing civil rights protesters that we saw looting Chicago during the Black Lives Matter riots, that the individuals so far that are arrested appear to be my folks, my people, or at least half my folks, half my people, which of course are the Latinos. Now, we have 2 names released. 5 people are arrested total. Their names are as follows. There's Eric Lujano Batista and Edwin Aguirre Ramirez, both 24, and they've been charged in connection with this nationwide $1 million sneaker theft operation. The surveillance video that you've seen still images from allegedly showed Batista and Ramirez breaking into the semi-trailer and stealing it and taking it to the warehouse in Austin to resell. This warehouse had actually become a reshipping area for cargo from railroad thefts across the country, advertised on social media or by word of mouth. Resale shops would go to the warehouse to buy items, not realizing they were stolen.
Now, the site of an investigation where law enforcement officials say a group of thieves used it as a home base to push stolen merchandise received through a series of railroad cargo thefts across the country.
Whether it be Nike products or UGG products, Adidas, Supreme, a lot of massive amounts of property, probably close to $5 million in merchandise.
Now look, I'm gonna say that this is probably likely, maybe true for some percentage of the people who are going to this warehouse. I mean, it's so much merchandise on display like it's a regular store that it actually makes a lot of sense for people to go there and not possibly imagine that this whole warehouse with $5 million worth of product is actually stolen merchandise. However, and I do mean how and then ever, even though I can understand how some people would be fooled, because again, it looks like a legit warehouse. The display looks pretty legit. It's organized and all that. The idea that nobody was suspicious of this, the idea that nobody realized that this place was not legit, to me is a bit shocking and a bit surprising, and honestly and genuinely, I don't believe it. But the thing is, criminality has taken such a root in this country, such a root in major metropolitan areas that are run by Democrats, that I believe that most people who were reselling the products that were there didn't care about their origin. They found a discount price. They didn't bother to even wonder why a 24-year-old, or actually 2 24-year-olds, were at the head of this operation, and they just took advantage of the system, because one of the things that we've been seeing in this country is an absolute embrace of lawlessness, and this to me is pictured perfectly by this operation. The fact of the matter is, if you're hearing about a resale operation on social media, if they're being advertised by word of mouth to only specifically resale shops, and they have brand new, untouched, limited edition merchandise, this should set off some red flags. This should have led to some reporting, but guess what? not a single person reported this. They messed up by getting caught stealing a specific thing. Now, for those of you who want to dismiss the idea that this is due to left-wing cities or left-wing states or bad state laws, bad city laws, or bad left-wing district attorneys, I want to point out, even though this is described as a nationwide issue, apparently one of the areas that they targeted a lot for these railway thefts was actually Memphis, Tennessee. And as we know, Memphis, Tennessee, majority black area in the state of Tennessee, they have one of those crappy prosecutors. We've done stories about how crime has spiked out of control in that area, and they're not doing anything about it. And guess what? Of all the cities in all the countries that you could tie to this retail theft operation, it turns out one of the hot spots that they utilize, as outlined by the article that I'm citing as a source, was in fact Memphis, Tennessee. So they would commit the robbery over there, they would relabel the products, ship the products to this warehouse, just so you guys can understand that this is a nationwide, or at least a crossing state lines kind of operation. Now, whenever you have an organized crime operation, and of course, we do have the Latino names, this leads me to believe that there is a potential, at least, for some gang involvement. I don't think that's out of line. I apologize to my Latino people for casting that aspersion on you, but in reality, in actuality, there are criminal elements within any particular group, and gang activity is something that is prominent in certain sections of Latin America, or Latinos in the United States of America, even though it's also true in Latin America, but we're not talking about that Latin America. Let me correct the record on that. And especially when you factor in that we're talking about the city of Chicago, which has a severe gang problem. And it's not just black gangs in the city of Chicago. The Latin gangs are also quite prominent in that area. So to me, I would not be surprised if later on throughout the course of this investigation, we find a network of criminality that is based in one of the gangs that is located in both Tennessee and both in the city of Chicago, or a gang that has a more nationwide presence. Now, by the way, I do want to point out, in order to be clear to you guys out there in the audience, that even though I correlate this to retail theft, and I liken this to a situation in San Francisco where most of the goods in that particular warehouse were from thefts that occurred at the store level, that this actually goes into a different category because it's actually cargo theft, because it's not at stores at the point of sale at the time that it was stolen. And in this country, unsurprisingly, since the Black Lives Matter riots, cargo theft is also up 63%. Now, I know a lot of people love to manipulate statistics related to retail theft, so they'll talk about shrink as a matter of losses for the stores. And of course, they'll ignore the fact that shrink is up in terms of this nationwide, not only in dollar amount, but in the percentage of items that are stolen. But they'll say, oh, well, a lot of these items are lost in transit, so the proportions are not going up specifically for retail theft. One of the reasons why that is actually happening is because cargo theft is seeing a similar increase that we're seeing on the retail theft level, especially when it comes to certain items. Don't be manipulated by the statistics or by people who seek to deny crime and try to fit the stats in afterwards, because the proof in the pudding is in the taste, and guess what? That taste was stolen away from you at the cargo level in terms of this story. Now, as a whole, as a country, we need to go back to our previous laws where we take repeat offenders seriously and we get out of this mindset that is just property. First and foremost, the foundation of any sane and prosperous society is the protection of private property rights. If you want to prosper, I don't care what level that you're at, you need those protections to be enforced. This all has an impact. It impacts each and every one of us. And if you don't believe that when you have $5 million worth of merchandise being stored in these criminal warehouses, that money not only attracts criminals, organized crime, gangs, etc., but also attracts violence, then you best believe you're definitely wrong, and we will eventually see the violence being portrayed in the media related to these theft rings if it hasn't already occurred already. A lot of times these are dangerous people. They're moving into the criminal industry that seems more advantageous to them, and right now we've made retail theft and cargo theft that category of crime that is attractive to these criminals. So we got to change the laws. We got to fight fight back against it. We got to prosecute it seriously. It's getting completely out of hand. And how many multi-million-dollar busts of warehouses worth of stuff do we need to see before we realize that we got a problem on our hands? To me, one was enough, but it happens over and over and over again. You just don't see it in your national media. It's a blip and you're meant to ignore it. But hey, that's why I'm here. Now, I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. If you like the video, you show me by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on my social media, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about a $5 million warehouse bust in Chicago. Till next time.